Republican defeat. Senators reject a measure to repeal parts of Obamacare. The future of the healthcare legislation now unknown. We're at the Capitol. Scaramucci outburst. The president's new communications director confirms tensions in the White House during a testy conversation with a reporter. Faith through a camera lens. We speak to a Catholic convert about her faith and a contest she's competing in. And an ancient city uncovered. A look at an archaeological treasure just outside of Rome. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, July 28, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for News from a Catholic Perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. We begin in London tonight. In the news, Charlie Gard has died. He was the critically ill baby at the center of a legal battle that attracted the attention of Pope Francis and President Donald Trump. Charlie suffered from a rare genetic disease causing brain damage and the inability to breathe unaided. His parents fought for the right to take him to the U.S. for an experimental therapy, but his doctors objected, saying treatment wouldn't help. A judge ruled yesterday Charlie should be transferred to a hospice and taken off life support. Charlie Gard would have turned 1 year old next week. A stunning loss for the promise to repeal Obamacare and defund Planned Parenthood. The Senate kills the so-called skinny repeal bill, seen as a last shot to get something through the chamber. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi is here to tell us more about the suspenseful vote. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Wyatt. It was a nail-biting stunner coming just before 2 this morning. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says it's time now to move on to other legislation. Tonight, Republicans deal with defeat.
I think it's a mistake for us to move on in such a way that we don't deal with the health care issue. Obamacare is a disaster. It has got to be fixed.
Vice President Pence was summoned to the Capitol late last night, but he wasn't needed for a tie-breaking vote because Senator John McCain stunned his colleagues.
No.
McCain joined 2 other Republicans, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine, and all Democrats in opposing what was seen as Republicans' last chance at a health care deal.
The ayes are 49, the nays are 51. The motion is not agreed to.
President Trump tweets 3 Republicans and 48 Democrats let the American people down. As I said from the beginning, let Obamacare implode, then deal. Watch. Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says they're ready to work with Republicans to fix Obamacare's problems.
Well, I hope what John McCain did will be regarded in history as a turning point, where the Senate turned back from its partisanship and started working together.
Today, House Republicans met behind closed doors as they come to terms with failing in a 7-year promise to repeal Obamacare.
I mean, it was almost getting like spiritual. I mean, they're like a moral failing to the country. They're bringing up religion, right? I mean, God came into the discussion as a hope. You know, don't lose hope. You know, we can. Someone above has got control, even if we don't.
Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price says the administration will now be working on health care goals not through legislation, but through regulation. Wyatt?
Jason, what have Catholics been making out of this GOP loss?
The U.S. Bishops' Conference has put out a statement today saying that the healthcare system really does need reform. It says it's not financially sustainable and it lacks protections banning those tax credits from going to abortion.
Correspondent Jason Calvi at the Capitol. Thanks, Jason. To talk more about health care, we're joined by Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers, a Republican from the state of Washington. Representative Rogers, this morning you led a meeting with House Republicans. Tell us, what is the House leadership going to do after the Senate failed to pass a repeal of Obamacare?
Well, there's a lot of disappointment among the Republicans in the House that the Senate was unable to move a bill last night. It's just been a few hours and we're still reassessing. This has long been a priority for the Republicans to repeal and replace Obamacare. We believe that this is very important, that we get this country on a different path, a better healthcare future for everyone in this country. And we will be continuing those efforts. We're going to have to regroup and see what the next steps are.
And we'll continue to follow that on the issue of health care. In addition, this week the House voted to pass new sanctions against Russia. Today, Russia responded, saying they want to reduce U.S. diplomats and close a government building. Why do you think we need more sanctions against Russia? And are you concerned at all about backlash?
This was very important legislation. It was important that America take this stand and we send a strong message to these regimes, Russia, North Korea, Iran. This was very important that we pass this bill, sending the message, and I believe that the president will sign it because we need to be taking this position.
It's interesting because this new legislation prevents President Trump from waiving certain penalties on Russia unless Congress agrees to them. So President Trump has yet to sign the bill itself. What do you say to those people who see this bill as sort of a power struggle between the executive branch of the government and Congress?
Well, we're the elected representatives of the people. There was broad bipartisan support, overwhelming support, both in the House and the Senate. Republicans and Democrats see that we need to be taking this action against these regimes where we're seeing increased terrorist attacks and threats. We're also seeing them develop these missile systems and the cyber attacks such that we need to be taking this action. We need to be taking this very seriously. It's the #1 responsibility of the federal government to keep our country safe.
Well, as you well know, the House GOP is facing some tough challenges ahead on a whole number of issues: tax reform, budget, and of course health care. What do you think is the priority for the House to tackle all of these challenges?
The House has been working very hard, and I'm proud of the work that we have done. We laid out an aggressive agenda at the beginning of the year. Right now, our priority is tax reform. We've already taken action in the House on 2 of President Obama's biggest failures, the repeal and replace of Obamacare, as well as the overhaul of Dodd-Frank. I would encourage people to go to didyouknow.gop. It really outlines everything that we've done. When we come back, we're going to continue our efforts, tax reform that is going to reward hard work in this country and benefit everyone, hardworking Americans all across this country.
So many important issues that the House of Representatives has to face here in the months ahead. Representative Kathy McMorris-Rodgers, thanks so much for talking with us about them.
Great to be with you.
After the House voted on the Russia sanctions, the Senate passes the sweeping legislation.
Are there any senators in the chamber wishing to change their vote? If not, the yeas are 98, the nays are 2. The bill is passed.
The bill gives Congress new powers to block the president from easing sanctions against Moscow. It also includes new sanctions on Iran and North Korea. The bill now goes to the president's desk. And President Trump travels to Long Island to discuss the fight on illegal immigration and violent crime.
We're going to restore safety to our streets and peace to our communities. And we're going to destroy the vile criminal cartel MS-13 and many other gangs.
MS-13 is an ultra-violent street gang that has committed a string of gruesome murders. The president urged Congress to dedicate more funding to cracking down on illegal immigration and violent crime. Not even a week into his job, President Trump's new communications director is confirming speculation there is bad blood between senior administration officials. Correspondent Mark Irons is at the White House tonight with more.
Good evening, Wyatt. In an expletive-laden interview that was published by The New Yorker late yesterday, Anthony Scaramucci had harsh words for White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon and Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, who Anthony Scaramucci thinks is a leaker.
Scaramucci tweeted in defense of his candid conversation, writing, "I sometimes use colorful language. I will refrain in this arena, but not give up the passionate fight for Donald Trump's agenda." He appeared surprised his remarks made it into print, adding, "I made a mistake in trusting a reporter. It won't happen again." Journalist Ryan Lizza's headline summed up the controversial conversation. Anthony Scaramucci called me to unload about White House leakers, Reince Priebus, and Steve Bannon. Scaramucci began by threatening to fire the entire White House communications staff. He also made a graphic sexual reference to Chief Strategist Steve Bannon, alleging Bannon is only looking to advance his own interest. He accused Chief of Staff Reince Priebus of being a, quote, paranoid schizophrenic, and implied that Priebus's days are numbered, saying, quote, Reince Priebus, he'll be asked to resign very shortly. The bad blood stems from Scaramucci's view that Priebus was insufficiently supportive of Trump at the end of the election campaign, and his belief that Priebus persuaded the president to keep Scaramucci out of the White House.
Anthony Scaramucci has become increasingly convinced that every negative story about him somehow Reince Priebus was behind.
According to the reporter who spoke with Scaramucci, the conversation was never off the record.
We did request to speak with Scaramucci. The White House says he's not doing media interviews today. He traveled with the president this afternoon to New York, but as he was boarding Air Force One, a reporter asked him about those remarks in that report, and he said, quote, better not to comment. Wyatt?
Correspondent Mark Irons at the White House. Thanks, Mark. A Pentagon spokesman says they believe a missile launched by North Korea today was an intercontinental ballistic missile. That means, in theory, it had enough range to reach portions of the United States. The Defense Department says this missile did not pose a threat to North America, but traveled more than 600 miles before splashing down in the Sea of Japan. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe called the launch a serious and real threat to his country. Some U.S. officials project North Korea will be able to launch a reliable ICBM by early next year. Pakistan's prime minister steps down hours after being disqualified from the job by the country's Supreme Court. Hundreds celebrate outside the court following the announcement. The court ruled Nawaz Sharif was dishonest to Parliament and the judicial system following an investigation into his family's finances. The court also ordered criminal charges to be filed against Sharif and his family. High-ranking Iraqi security officials say up to 7,000 ISIS affiliates remain in Iraq after the fall of Mosul. The numbers include about 4,000 militants and 3,000 supporters who were employed by the group. Over in Syria, there are up to another 7,000 militants and 5,000 supporters. Iraqi officials say ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is likely still alive, denying some earlier reports which say he was killed. Two women accused of killing Kim Jong-nam, the half-brother of North Korea's leader, are set to go on trial in Malaysia. A judge ruled today the trial for the women will begin October 2nd and will last nearly 2 months. The two women are accused of smearing Kim Jong-nam's face with a banned nerve agent at an airport in February. The women, who face a possible death penalty if convicted, say they were duped into thinking they were playing a harmless prank for a hidden camera TV show. Rome isn't just home to the Vatican, it's also a city known for its archaeological treasures. Lauren Ashburn recently spoke to one professor who's leading an archaeological dig in an ancient city.
Professor Nick Terranato of Roman Studies at the University of Michigan and the director of the Gabby Project joins us from Rome. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
What is the Gabby Project and what have you found?
So the Gabby Project aims at investigating a city that is just outside Rome and that is a great example of how Roman urbanism developed. So for the last 10 years, I've taken over 40 undergraduates from my university and other universities to dig in the sun.
Which is quite a task to have to do that. Our producer is from the university, or from Michigan, the Michigan area. Our executive producer is a classics study major, and so we have no choice but to talk to you about your time in the hot sun. But do tell me right now, what else has been impacted in Rome by these archaeological digs? Is it taking a long time?
Yes, well, Rome has always had this conundrum that on the one hand you want to develop the city wants to develop its infrastructure, and it also wants to preserve its unique heritage. So whenever you're trying to build a subway line or anything really, you have to reconcile the various needs, and very often, in building a subway stop, they impact archaeology, and they have to, everything grinds to a halt, people get unhappy, and some sort of resolution needs to be found.
Well, what do you think that resolution should be?
Well, a lot can be done in terms of what we call preventative archaeology. So before you actually start digging, you can do a number of tests, including, for instance, ground-penetrating radar, and there's a whole array of new techniques that will that can allow you to figure out what's under the soil before you start excavating, which means that you can try to avoid it, maybe build a subway station somewhere else, a little off to one side, or you can be, in any case, prepared. The problem is that when you have, everything is in full swing, it's very hard to stop for archaeology.
Even though, as an archaeologist, you think we should?
Well, I think that some kind of, win-win solution must be found, because after all, archaeology is one of the things that, makes people come to this city. And, it's a big piece of the economy of Rome is people coming to see its archaeology. So we have to preserve it.
I'm one of those people. So thank you so much for your role in doing what you can to preserve the heritage. Professor Nick Terranato, Roman Studies at the University of Michigan.
Coming up, women and religious freedom.
Human rights are universal, indivisible, interrelated, and interdependent.
We discuss a new report connecting women's rights to religion and belief. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. A new report released by the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom documents a connection between women's rights and the freedom of religion and belief. Lauren Ashburn takes a closer look at the report with a longtime religious freedom advocate.
Joining us now is Cristina Arriaga, Vice Chair of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's great being back.
You're just here from Oxford, where you presented this new report on women and religious freedom. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we went to Oxford University because there are a lot of scholars and academics and UN officials who were meeting there precisely to talk about human rights. And our expert on women's rights and religious freedom authored this report, and we were there to present the report and get feedback. This is a very innovative report. No one had really written about the synergy, the connection between women's rights and freedom of religion and belief.
And so let's talk about some specific examples of a woman whose rights were violated because of a religious freedom law in Pakistan.
We at the United States Commission for International Religious Freedom have seen that countries that protect religious freedom, have robust protection for religious freedom, also have robust protections for women. So Pakistan is a place where regrettably there is a bad human rights situation, freedom of religion and belief is not protected, and there's this case of this woman, Asia Bibi, who was in a dispute with fellow women in her village. She's Christian, most of the women were not, and they accused her of blasphemy. And unfortunately, she was sentenced to death in 2010 because fellow women accused her of speaking against the Prophet Muhammad. Had there been protections for religious freedom, Asia Bibi would not be in prison. She wouldn't have been condemned to death. The Pope himself has interceded on her behalf.
And her husband went to visit him.
Her husband and children went to visit him to appeal on her behalf. The United States government, the United Nations has been following this, and unfortunately, she remains in solitary confinement in Lahore in Pakistan.
But she is not the only one. This is just one of many examples. There are some other women in Iran, 2 women who've been charged with operating an underground educational system.
Yes, in Iran, the Baha'i religion is a pacifist religion, has been banned by the state. And these 2 women, along with 5 other leaders of the Baha'i community, started an underground school to educate their own children who were forbidden from going to university because of lack of freedom of religion and belief. These kids were so well educated that they ended up at Columbia University, they ended up at Oxford University. The Iranian government found out about it, and to make an example, they imprisoned these 7 leaders, including 2 women, and sentenced to 20 years in prison just for exercising their right to live according to their deeply held convictions.
In your opinion, what steps need to happen in the international community to protect women and not have religion used against them?
Human rights are universal, indivisible, interrelated, and interdependent. The second that a state decides that they will respect one human right and not the other, it becomes difficult and impossible for people to really live according to their convictions. We at the United States Commission for International Religious Freedom feel that the fragmentation of rights is dangerous for any country, but particularly for the human rights community.
Thank you so much for explaining this report to us. Cristina Arriaga, Vice Chair of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom.
Thank you.
Tonight on EWTN's ProLife Weekly, Catherine Zeltner looks back on her interview with the parents of Jackson Buell. He's the toddler who's missing roughly 80% of his brain. Jackson's father explains their decision to say yes to life despite doctors' fears.
There's a great chance he will not survive, and then if he does survive, he'll probably never hear, probably never see, probably never walk, probably never talk, probably never know when he's hungry, basically not be able to do anything effectively. We still walked forward in our own faith saying it's not our choice.
Catherine also looks back on her other pro-life interviews. ProLife Weekly airs tonight at 11 p.m. Eastern right here on EWTN. It re-airs Sunday morning at 10. Up next, we'll speak to a Catholic convert whose video is in the running to win a Faith Counts contest. Plus, celebrating Christianity, the historical meaning behind this celebration in Ukraine. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. According to the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, thousands of new Catholics were welcomed into the church during this year's Easter Vigil. Our next guest converted to Catholicism 2 years ago and created a video about what her faith means to her. The film, titled Faith is Like Stained Glass, is now one of the top 10 finalists in a contest sponsored by Faith Counts, a non-denominational organization comprised of faith communities representing nearly 100 million Americans. We welcome into the studio Samantha Schroeder, who created and submitted the video. Samantha, what inspired you to create this video in the first place?
So I learned about the contest 2 years ago, and I immediately wanted to make a video, but I didn't know how to. I had no access to video making, and now 2 years later, my job in Washington is filmmaking. And one of our editors at my company is a Catholic filmmaker, and so I called him up and I said, "Do you want to make this film with me?" And he said, "Sure, let's do it."
So tell me the analogy that you use in the film.
So the analogy in the film and in my life is that my faith is like stained glass, and that if it wasn't for these great figures throughout church history, I wouldn't have encountered the faith, not only through the books that I've read, but through people I've encountered in my life, through very holy, observant Catholics who have shared with me their experience of the faith.
You yourself were baptized Episcopalian, but you didn't always participate in the church. What led you to convert to Catholicism?
So having gone to a secular state university in Florida, strangely enough, through studying philosophy, I first read some Catholic thinkers, St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Augustine, and eventually Dietrich von Hildebrand, instrumental in my conversion. And through, at first, a journey intellectually and then spiritually and through the heart, I came to love and embrace the Church's teachings.
Tell me a little bit more about that, what it is specifically about the Church's teaching. You said, for example, you were inspired by the Eucharist.
Yeah, so the first and most difficult church teaching for me was the Eucharist. I actually came to accept the Church's teachings on love, sex, and marriage and dating before embracing the Church's teachings of the real presence in the Eucharist. And so that took about 5 years to really embrace all of it.
Tell me about the film itself for people who want to see it. Where can they go to view it?
Sure, so the film is available on www.faithcounts.com, and voting on the fan favorite video will end July 31st.
And what is the grand prize?
Well, the grand prize is $20,000, and the fan favorite prize is $10,000, so I'd be happy with either prize.
Tell me about what you hope people will take away when they watch this video.
So I hope that either in watching the video or encountering me in their life, I hope that they will come to glimpse a fraction of the beauty of the Catholic Church.
And that's such a powerful message, and it's one that we hope people will take away. Samantha Schroeder, creator of the video Faith is Like a Stained Glass. Thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
Finally tonight, a march in Kiev, Ukraine to celebrate Christianity. Members of the Orthodox Church prayed in observance of the holiday marking the adoption of Christianity in what is now Russia and Ukraine in the 10th century. The group marched from a hillside monument to a Kiev cathedral. And we thank you for joining us this week. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We're back here on Monday with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless.